Hi, everyone. Hello. How's everybody doing? Is lunch good? Nobody fall asleep, okay? Although it's Jordan talking, so who knows? Just teasing. So if you don't know me, my name is Amber Bracegirdle. I'm a co-founder of Mediavine. Jordan here is one of our senior engineers.
I'm an engineering manager.
This is new.
I got
engineering
promoted
manager
to
now.
engineering manager. I'm an
He
engineering
did.
manager.
Yes. Really, I'm just here to be the translator in case he goes too far into the geek.
The real word is adult supervision, I think is the appropriate term.
Correct. Yeah, so if you start to feel a little bit cross-eyed or whatever, just catch my eye and be do that in real words, please. And I will. I've been Eric's translator for about 5 years now, so
she has practice.
I do have practice. So yeah, we're going to talk about mobile first. I'll let Jordan explain what the heck that is.
So right off the bat, mobile first, and nice to meet everyone. Mobile first is the concept that your website should be optimized for mobile more than any other platform. Desktop, tablet, nothing. Focus on the small screen size. Once upon a time, many of you probably heard your site should be responsive. That was then, this is now. Responsive isn't good enough anymore. Because responsive was built from the mentality that desktop was still first, but it would work on a phone. Now it's your site should be built for a phone and it should work on a desktop. So let's talk a little more about this. 78%, that's the amount of traffic over the last 30 days that took place on Mediavine sites on mobile devices. That means that not much traffic is coming from desktop. So if your site isn't prepared to be ready for that mobile traffic, you are missing out on a large piece of the pie, right? So that's what this talk is about, is trying to meet those expectations and meet the world where it is. I mean, how many of you have a smartphone? I mean, all of you, right? Honestly, I hate the term smartphone because how often do we actually use it as a phone?
He speaks for himself.
But the point being, a lot of you are probably visiting other websites on your phones. There's probably a good chance though that you don't always visit your website on your phone because you sit at your desktop and you edit that site. So one of the things that I want everyone to do at the end of this is go and use your website from your phone, because I'm betting it's not something you do every day. So again, when editing your site and looking at your site, odds are you're seeing mostly a desktop perspective. That's just the nature of working in WordPress. WordPress is great. It does not have a very good editing experience if you're trying to use even a tablet, much less a phone. It sort of works, but not well. And so you're going to pull out a laptop or you're going to sit at a desktop and you're going to make those changes. And then you're going to go check those changes on the desktop because that's where you're sitting. I would encourage you to start checking those changes on your phone as well, or using Chrome's inspector tools to check out what the mobile view looks like. And that, again, that's also not where your readers are engaging. My wife, as an example, never sits at a laptop. She reads all kinds of blogs, she engages on Instagram, she clicks through links to websites. She does not do that on a tablet, she does not do that on a laptop, she's doing that from an iPhone XR every single time. I'm like, do you want me to grab your laptop? She said, no, I don't want to sit in front of that. So where do you start? Because this is where it's intimidating, right? This is how do I get there? I know this is what I'm supposed to do. So look at your site on mobile devices. Try and take notes. Sit down at a piece of paper. I know. Me, I would never use paper. I'd never be able to read it. But some people like paper. Write down a list of the things that don't work well, that you don't like. Think about what that looks like on the phone and think about how that connects to your readers or doesn't connect to your readers.
Make sure you turn Wi-Fi off and then load your site.
How fast does it load? Is it fast on LTE? Is it fast on 3G? Is it fast on Wi-Fi? There's some of you here who your sites are not even fast on Wi-Fi. That's why you're here, right? What does it look like on mobile search results? Now, this is a big new thing that our friends at Google are changing the game with, right? Mobile first indexing is coming by default on July 1st. That means they're indexing what your site looks like on mobile more than what it looks like on desktop. It means that when we talk about plugins, you want to look for ways to use rich snippets and make sure that your search results are appearing as early in search results and are as engaging on mobile as possible. So we're going to talk about tools of the trade. There is one major tool of the trade, and I have spent the last 6 months obsessing over it. Lighthouse. This is where I live now. I live in Lighthouse. Trellis was built day one. We built a whole test suite so that every time we make a change to our code, it runs an automated Lighthouse test and tells us where our scores are. And if we don't meet a minimum level of scores, our tests fail and we have to start over. Not from scratch, but from that particular piece of code. It also powers PageSpeed Insights, which means if you go to PageSpeed Insights and run that, it's just running Lighthouse. So there's easier ways that you can run Lighthouse to get better insights into what you're seeing and why PageSpeed Insights isn't giving you the score that you want. It impacts rankings. As Mobile First Index is telling you, and I've had multiple people come to me and say, I went to GSC and it said that my page was slow and that was why it was hurting my rankings. This is now. Like, you have to deal with this as soon as we can.
Yeah. And part of the reason for that is Google's looking for its next billion users, and most of the next billion users of the internet are in countries that don't have large-scale Wi-Fi like we have in the United States and Canada and UK. They're in places like India. And so they are looking at your site on a mobile phone with a 3G connection, the slowest possible connection for data at this point in time. Edge is worse, but they want your site to be accessible by those next billion users. They're basically trying to move the goalpost so that everyone has a better experience.
So the scores you're going to see today are from one of our internal sites, internal employees site that is running Trellis today. That's the point of reference that I have to work from. This is what I call the box score. Like, I literally, when my developers are working with me and there's a problem in what our score is, I'll ask what the box score is. I have also accidentally asked some folks this weekend, what's your box score? And you had no idea what I was talking about because that's lingo that I made up. This is the box score. This is your overarching score on Lighthouse. If you run a Lighthouse test, these are the 5 things you're going to see immediately. Performance, that's going to talk about server, how much page weight is, the number of DOM elements, and we're going to get into that in a few minutes. Accessibility, that's the ability of your site to be parsed typically by a screen reader for someone who might be visually or otherwise unable to sort of process what would be a traditional website the way that we see it. This could be, a lot of times it's like the difference between the black of your font and a gray background that makes it harder for someone who might be colorblind to read. And that we talk about those features are included in Lighthouse. Best practices, I'm going to be honest. There's going to be quite a few things in the best practices column that you're not going to be able to fix by yourself. But what that's going to tell you is that you need to change hosts. Because if some of those things pop up, there's nothing you can do other than change hosts. Or you can demand that your host get with the times. SEO, this is not an overarching super-powered SEO, SEMrush, super tower tool. This is basics, right? Title tags, meta tag, core meta tags, making sure that your links have title images have alt tags and links have title attributes. I'm sorry. It tells me what I have to do. I don't always remember them all. And then progressive web app, which we just threw in there for fun because, you know, we like to do our jobs well. The progressive web app is the ability for your website to potentially load assets offline, which means somebody visited your website and they reopen it when they're in the subway or somewhere they have no internet, they still can read the content. It takes it offline and makes it available. It also makes your website installable to people's phones as well as the desktop with Chrome. So let's start at the beginning. Performance, yes. Go ahead.
Where is this though?
Lighthouse? Okay. So Lighthouse is available as a Chrome extension. So if you Google search, like everybody that's got laptops out right now, you can go to in your Chrome browser, search Lighthouse Chrome extension and install that extension. What that's going to do is it's going to put a little box, and I meant to do a screenshot of this, and I'm sorry, a little box in the top right corner that you can click, and it'll run your Lighthouse scores in a sort of a test, and then present this big, long report that we're going to go through a little real quick to help tell you what your scores are. And the best part about this is it basically gives you an action list of the things that you might need to address. Some of these things are going to be things you can address by adjusting the plugins you run. Some of them are going to be things you're going to need help for. Or you can install some other software that may be coming out later this year.
I feel like I'm pretty savvy on this stuff and I've not downloaded this before.
So it's also available in developer tools.
Okay.
In the back end, if you run developer tools, like you open it, it's like F12, you open that. That's where you can also look at your site in a mobile view. Like you can change what what supposed screen you're on, and it'll show you your site on a mobile view. And so a lot of people for a long time were just using it in developer tools. And in fact, guys, we even had a theory of content episode where we were talking about Lighthouse, and I made Josh, he never edits, I made him edit all of it out because it wasn't part of PageSpeed Insights yet. And I was like, bloggers are going to die because so many things were lighting up red, including things like Google Fonts. And I was like, they're gonna lose their minds, and it's all going to be all consuming. And I made him take it out, and then literally Lighthouse came to PageSpeed Insights 2 weeks later.
At the end of the presentation, I will hop on the computer and actually walk through installing the extension and running it one time.
I just got it installed.
Oh, you got it? Oh, so you're good. So you click the button and it'll run the tests.
Yeah.
All right, so measuring performance. I've sort of hit the ones that will make the most difference the fastest for you. Server response times. This is most of the time going to be one that is going to be a mix of things that you can potentially do, or it might be something that needs to be talked to your host about. You can improve server response times by using an adequate caching plugin that's going to cache your HTML in your page and serve that a little faster.
Who knows what a cache is? Okay.
That's going to be a WP Rocket, a W3 Total Cache, something like that. Basically what happens with that is your page loads, and that runs on the server-side scripting language, but what it does is it creates the document that the web sees, and it saves that so it doesn't have to re-render all of those operations. It just becomes a flat document that can be reused. How many CSS, JavaScript font, and image files are being loaded? This is a big one, and this is one of the hardest things to deal with, particularly with CSS and JavaScript. Almost every plugin you install is going to add additional CSS and JavaScript. The best you can hope for used to be you would install Rocket or Total Cache, and it would compile all your CSS and JavaScript into one big file, so it was serving fewer files. The problem is that doesn't help anymore. What ends up happening is because you're doing that, you create these giant loads, this giant load file size of your CSS and JavaScript, and you'll load a lot of CSS and JavaScript that you probably don't need on a given page. So while the previous solution used to be just concatenate everything, which means mix it all down into one big file, it's not working so well anymore, because what's more important is to reduce the number of requests and the size of the requests as small as you can. So this is definitely one of the hardest things to deal with. Unfortunately, image files are relatively easy to solve because you're going to keep those. You're going to have a variety of lazy load plugins that you might use for images. And if you're using something like a short pixel, you can use that to make sure that you're serving appropriate sized images. This one's pretty easy to solve. This one is not. And I'm sorry. I've been on several discussions with folks today. There's not a whole lot I can do here. That's why we built Trellis, right? Because Trellis addresses these by being aggressive in ways that WordPress traditionally tries to avoid. Which is one of the reasons why we warn folks that plugins are going to have to be kind of Trellis optimized, or they might lose some functionality and we have to pick and choose what we're going to use. So when it comes to performance, a lot of times the best way to get your site speed up is to evaluate your plugins and really consider if it's creating more value than the page speed advantages will give you. If that email sign up that gets one person every 6 months is worth the 10 points of page speed that you're losing, those are decisions that you have to make yourself, and we encourage you to do that and really evaluate. One of the things I've talked about in my sessions with folks this morning is just test it first, right? Turn off the plugin, let it sit for 2 weeks. See what happens to your revenue. See what happens to your analytics. If you don't see your analytics drop, or maybe they improve, you know that it was not a plugin that you really needed. If you're seeing a major loss in your business because you do not have this plugin anymore, turn it back on. Obviously, it was worth that page speed cost that you're doing. Every point is a decision about what cost is worth it. How long does it take for CSS and JavaScript to process? This is another thing related to why those giant files don't work. Because if you're loading a lot of CSS you don't need, all of that is taking processing time that could be used elsewhere. Or it could mean that it's done and able to present to the user in the best possible way. It's a bigger problem with JavaScript because JavaScript not only has to be read, but it has to be processed and all of that JavaScript logically applied to the page. A lot of this is very technical, and I'm sorry, it just is. So I'm going to run down this list really quick, and then I'm going to take questions per section, just a couple, because I understand that this is really dense material. So if we look over here on the left, it's a little hard to read, but I'll make sure my slides are made available somewhere because, that's what we do. Enable render blocking resources. A lot of times this is going to be CSS and JavaScript files like jQuery. If you're running jQuery almost all the time, like Eric mentioned on the first day, that's a render blocking resource, and it's often a dependency for most plugins. A lot of the plugins that are going to get the Trellis seal of approval will have eliminated jQuery as a dependency for their plugin to work, because it means their JavaScript can operate independently without requiring external files.
Explain why so many plugins use jQuery.
The reason so many plugins use jQuery is because once upon a time, browsers were not capable of rendering JavaScript concisely across different platforms. Over the last few years, particularly, the number of discrepancies between how browsers processed JavaScript and CSS has started to shrink precipitously. With the change for Edge to actually use the Chromium engine, it means that there's really almost...
Slow down.
Sorry?
So Microsoft Internet Explorer went away. They created Edge, which is basically just Internet Explorer. Earlier this year, I believe they announced that they would be moving to Chromium, which is also sort of the language that Chrome and browsers and Mozilla use.
Mozilla uses a different one, but it is this. So essentially, Edge is the same thing as Chrome now, which means anything that works in Chrome pretty much works in Edge, which means the amount of discrepancy is just so small that we could do a lot more stuff without needing jQuery the way we used to. However, WordPress is a pretty old CMS, and it was heavily dependent on jQuery for a very long time. And most plugins just sort of took for granted that they could have jQuery available to them and lazied their way out.
Yeah, and so you get a lot of plugin developers today who just kind of default think that they need jQuery to accomplish what they want to do. And it's really kind of not true anymore, but a lot of plugin developers are not switching their mindset up to create stuff that doesn't need it, which is why we're saying we're going to try and work with as many of the popular plugin that you guys love as we can on Trellis, because we don't use it. We don't allow our developers to use it, and so it's not really going to be supported as part of Trellis.
It's also, as a developer, not nearly as necessary as it used to be. Once upon a time, it was very hard to do anything in JavaScript without jQuery. It's not really the case anymore. So we also have Minify CSS, Minify JavaScript. Those are things that WP Rocket does pretty well. However, as well as some of the other caching plugins. However, it can cause some problems, and so this is one of those things that you can normally cover and can take care of, but it can be a little weird. Deferring off-stream images, that means lazy load images. There are quite a few good lazy load plugins. One of the differences between most of the plugins versus it being built in is that the plugins only have access to your post content, so they can do images that are embedded in the content. They normally can't touch and help process and lazy load images that are inside your actual like theme, like your featured image in a feed page. It's very hard for most plugins to be able to lazy load those images.
Or like your bio headshot in
Exactly.
your sidebar. It can't do that.
Pre-connect to required origins. This is a really bizarre one that I'm not going to explain. Never mind. Server response times being below a certain period. That's, again, a server-based issue. You need to make sure that...
Meaning your host.
Yeah, your page loads fast, which means that the URL loads quickly and it gets to the URL and then passes it to the server as quickly as possible.
And I was actually talking with a blogger yesterday. I don't know if you guys realize this, but a lot of times, unless you are paying for a dedicated space with your host, your website lives on a computer with a lot of other websites. And depending on how much traffic those other websites are getting will affect your own server response time, meaning your website is slower because somebody else on the same computer is getting more traffic. Which is why we kind of talk all the time about, really pay attention to your hosting. It's the foundation of your house. It should absolutely be something you spend money on. It should not be something that you only upgrade once something goes viral. The more you pay attention to it early on, the faster you grow. Because you have a great user experience of fast load time. Search engines love that. People love that. It just is a knock-on effect to growing your website. A lot of times people say, I'm stagnant, I can't grow. And it's because they haven't put any more resources into the actual house where their website lives.
I'm going to cover a couple of more of these core ones. Avoid enormous network payloads. This is the one that kills you with the concatenated giant CSS and JavaScript files, because that's a large network payload.
Nobody knows what concatenate means.
Sorry. mixes all your JavaScript or all of your CSS into one file instead of being spread over many. That's the problem of that traditional solution, is that those file sizes have gotten really big as it tries to mix all of your CSS up into one file. And then, so you might have fewer requests, but you're paying more and the size of that request is huge.
So basically what you're saying there is that Google's saying, you know that thing that everybody did for 10 years, stop doing it?
Yeah, yes, that's basically what happened.
Before we blame Google, we should also say that that used to be best practice because it actually was best practice until
Right.
HTTP2.
This
and
is true.
HTTPS.
I was
sure.
not going to dig into
I'm not-
HTTP2. I guess I'm digging into HTTP2
Everyone
now.
here should be secure on their website. HTTPS required for HTTP2, and now best practice is to split it up.
Yes. So,
New website.
yeah, there's HTTP1 meant you could do basically 2 requests at a time. HTTP2 means you can do a ton of them. That's actually an item that will show up in best practices. If you run a Lighthouse test and it says you have HTTP1 issues and they are tied to your root domain, like your actual website, that is a host problem that you need to go yell at them for. The last one is I'm going to mention is excessive DOM size. I saw quite a few sites in the last few days that have what's called excessive DOM size because they had 12, 13, 2,000 DOM nodes. Nobody here probably knows what a DOM node is, and so I'm going to explain it a little bit. Every time you see something on the page, it's either a text node or a DOM node. A text node is pretty simple, it's blocks of text. However, that text is wrapped in some HTML code looking stuff that tells it what to look like. Now, when you have that nested too deeply, it takes more and more time for CSS to process against it and for that HTML to be properly rendered. Never mind the fact that if it's, so like that's where Visual Composer starts to be a real problem. Elementor, because in order for them to get these sort of WYSIWYG styles, they have to load a lot of extra DOM nodes to handle the variety of styles that might need to be in play to make that look the way you want it to. And so the page might look better to you. It's probably you're paying for that look with another price, right? We all have to pay the piper, and so you can pay it one way or the other. So that's what excessive DOM nodes is. You also probably heard recommendations that you should lazy load comments, and that's because comments do take up a lot of DOM nodes on their own. Guess what? Trellis lazy loads comments by default. So quick, I'll do 2 questions on performance because this is honestly maybe the most complicated list of things that we have to talk about. Does anybody have a couple of questions on performance that I might be able to answer right quick? Yes. Yes.
So is AMP still a thing that we should be thinking about, or is that just like...
Want me to answer that?
I mean, I know how I'm going to answer it. I don't know how you're going to answer it, so you go ahead.
Go for it, go for it. AMP is definitely awesome for news sites. It's not necessarily awesome right now for lifestyle websites. It doesn't give you any additional boost in search rankings at all. Pretty much, I assume everyone in this room is monetizing in some fashion. The problem is that advertisers do not create ads for AMP, and AMP has a lot of requirements in order for you to have an AMP ad, like the actual visual ad. And so what happens if people enable AMP, all of their mobile traffic goes there, and then there's a bug on Pinterest that they won't admit as a bug, where if they detect you have an AMP signal, they start sending all of your traffic to the AMP pages, which means your ad income goes shoo. There are some sites that do very well with AMP. Typically, though, they are getting tons of traffic because they are a news site. So I would say you wouldn't still recommend it, I assume, for right now.
If you're a Google News
Yes.
site, like the Hollywood Gossip, I'd 100% recommend.
Yes, but I would assume that most everyone in this room is not a Google News site. That is not
You know if
typically
you're
our.
a Google News publisher because you applied for it and got accepted.
There you go. So, if it were improving your rankings or something, we would definitely say that might be a cost benefit that you really could weigh. But since it's not, and especially with that extra Pinterest layer, since so many of us in this room rely on Pinterest for traffic, I would say it's not a good idea right now.
We tried it. It was a mess. Run away.
That's part of the goal of our PWA implementation, is to make pages that are not AMP essentially as fast as AMP pages. You had a question?
I don't remember what it is.
Okay, well, we can
Anybody
circle
else?
back at the end.
Okay.
Oh, I
Oh,
remember. Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, one question is, it seems like when you're doing this kind of analysis with pages with ads, it gets all messy. In other words, like a lot more things to resolve come up.
It
than
depends
if
on what you're
doing
using
without
to
it.
analyze.
And yeah, well, I mean, true. I've used Lighthouse recently, but for years, I use things like pagespeed and GT metrics and
Right.
some
So
of those other tools, Pingdom.
right. So the problem with like GT metrics and Pingdom and stuff, they haven't kind of moved along the way that Lighthouse has in terms of evaluating your site. So like for example, by default, GT metrics and Pingdom both still only test your desktop, not your mobile site. The second thing is they look at your site from they literally load it from top to bottom. So it's almost as if when you work with Mediavine, one of the advantages of working with Mediavine is that we lazy load the ads, right? So if someone hasn't scrolled near it, that ad does not load. GT metrics and Pingdom, they load the entire page. So every single one of those ads and ad requests loads as part of their page speed analysis. But that is not how the reader is seeing your load. So that's why it gets messier on those other tools, because they're not adding context, right? They're not saying, oh, these ads or these images, they don't do it with images either. So these ads or these images aren't lazy loaded. They're still counting that in your total time, which is why we always recommend the 2 page speed testers that Google themselves recommends, which is PageSpeed Insights /Lighthouse or webpagetest.org.
We're also
So
continuing.
Lighthouse, so all the stuff you see in Lighthouse is going to look the same whether you have ads on the page or not?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
Assuming that you enabled it.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
You do need to enable the optimizations for mobile. One of the other things that we are continuing to do is work on other ways to optimize ads for mobile experiences and to reduce our footprint when we're loading a page. Recently, we switched from using a traditional, what's called a waypoints library, which is a scrolling-based library. Now that intersection observers, which is a native API for sort of identifying
That's
lazy
a
load
lot
and
of
where you are in the
technical
page.
words. A lot of them.
We made things faster by using a more native
I just
thing.
felt everyone in the room.
Sorry,
go,
I get
"What?"
excited because I really love intersection observers.
But I think I missed the very first comment, which was you have to enable something.
Page speed
Oh,
optimization
in
the
your
dashboard.
Mediavine dashboard, if you're working with Mediavine, we have 2 options for you in your dashboard to sort of optimize for speed. And we separate it out between mobile and desktop, obviously, because typically people on a desktop still have Wi-Fi, full speed internet, etc. So page speed is not as important there, and desktop still pays better CPMs than mobile do, even if most of your traffic is mobile. So most people did not see RPM impact by enabling mobile. Some people did see impact with enabling desktop and some people didn't. So you can play around with it and watch it. But with both of those enabled, your ads will not show up as a problem if you're with
I have
Mediavine.
mobile checked and desktop not checked.
Okay. Yeah, which is
And
totally
Lighthouse
fine.
is a mobile-first testing tool, whereas GT Metrics is
Desktop first.
desktop first. Mind you, we still score very well in GT Metrics as well. So to make Eric happy, I had already included HTTP2 and HTTP1 in the thing. I just want to clarify, we were going to get there. So this is going to be some things that very much best practice. It's a shorter list. One of the performance list is kind of the most important list, and that number on Lighthouse is almost always the one-to-one number with page speed. So some of these other numbers are not going to show up in your PageSpeed Insights report the same way, but they do help sort of give a better total site health, especially in context with a mobile-first experience. Best practices, you are not going to have to worry about avoids application cache. You can pretty much just count that as a win on your Lighthouse report, just out of the gate. Use HTTPS. HTTPS is the recommendation. Does anybody here not have HTTPS installed? Yes, that's awesome. Okay, use HTTP2. This is a server-based situation. If you run this test and you don't get a green light for this, you
Go
need to
yell
talk
at
to your host.
Yeah, go yell at your host. And if they tell you you're crazy, find a new host. Like, seriously, though.
Uses passive listeners to improve scrolling performance. By the way, that green light is because we use intersection observers instead of the other thing. So intersection observers are good, and I would wear a sticker or a button that said it. Can we get an intersection observers button next year? No, okay. Avoids document write. I'm not sure why this is in there, but at the same time, I've never seen anyone use this. It terrifies me that anyone ever would, but it's there, so you can call that a gimme.
And if you end up failing that, maybe email Jordan.
Yeah, I actually kind of want to see it. Links to cross-origin destinations, we all have heard about those.
No, have we?
Are you messing with me?
No, I'm not messing with you.
We have a
It's just-
check thing in the MC. I don't totally understand it. I'm not going to lie. I don't know how it works in our thing. I know you're not supposed to have it. I'm sorry. Eric, can you explain? The cross-origin destinations are safe. I'm not actually totally sure I understand that one.
When you're doing an outgoing link, you have to do like rel equals no refer. Is that the thing you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's for your social share buttons and your address. You need to also have those as no follows.
Oh yeah, we do that. We do that because I must have failed this test before.
It should be no refer, right? It's no refer.
No, it's no refer.
It's either no refer or no opener, right? Yeah, okay.
Stop like man in the middle or cross scripting attacks.
I fixed this, I just didn't remember doing it because I remember doing that part, but I didn't remember which test I failed. Because one of the best parts about the Lighthouse test is a lot of times if you open up the little drop downs, it'll straight tell you what you have to do. So if it's like an HTML tweak, it'll tell you what HTML you're missing. It'll tell you you're missing a no refer. That's awesome.
Sorry, I just remember WordPress automatically solves this, and we add this to the end of the ad. So any external links, WordPress is automatically going to add the no refer. That's the protector site for security. So if you're running WordPress, you're going to pass it.
Page has HTML doc type. If that's not true, you need to talk to your theme developer. Front-end libraries. A lot of you are going to fail the avoids front-end libraries with known security vulnerabilities because several versions of jQuery, which is packaged with WordPress, have known vulnerabilities. And depending on your plugins and which version of jQuery they want, it might fail. It'll tell you what JavaScript libraries you're loading, and if this is red, I think it's because it doesn't like that JavaScript library, but I'm not totally sure. I've not seen this one red before. So that's about it. Yeah. So this is not too bad, and a lot of these are not going to be things you're going to deal with yourself. Quite a few of these that you're likely to get are going to be you getting an opportunity to demand that your host do better. Basic SEO. This is a very basic SEO test. It's basically, do you hit the bare minimums that we're not going to ding you negatively for SEO?
Just to that last point, we're going to get a lot of hosts that hate us.
Do we not already have a lot of hosts that hate us?
We do have a few, but it's going to increase.
Meta tags, images have alt attributes, legible font sizes. Now, if you are a Mediavine pub, you should already have legible font sizes, or Eric is going to haunt you.
We bang that drum so hard, guys.
Basically, it's going to make sure that it's got a viewport tag to say that it's supposed to be mobile responsive, which is mobile first. Title elements, this is very simple stuff. The page actually loads and gets a 200, which is a HTTP status code that the browser understands and you don't need to.
Right, basically, so if for some reason you were to fail that HTTP status code one, with when you're testing an actual page, like a post on your website, there's something funky going on and you need to talk to your host, and because typically what that's looking for, there are status codes that sit behind a browser. We all know what a 404 is, right? That's an HTTP status code, and a 404 is known as this page doesn't exist, right? There's also the redirects, and when a web page loads, the status code that's behind everything is 200. So that's what that's looking for, is a 200 status code. And if it gets anything else, you're going to get a ding there.
Robots.txt is valid. Page isn't blocked from indexing. So, it's a little bit helpful, but frankly, if you're failing these, you're probably having a bad day already. If you've got Yoast installed and you fail these, you did something really wrong in your Yoast settings. So this is the easy one. It should be, because I know how much many of you obsess about your SEO tags. You should be good here.
And a lot of the stuff that's here, like if you email our support team, like we can't fix it for you, but we might be able to tell you,
The one
oh,
you're
this is the thing that needs to happen.
potentially going to have missing is image elements having alt attributes. That might be because your developer didn't include an alt attribute in their featured image render if they use featured images in your theme. It also might be that you didn't describe the image and sort of the details of your media gallery. So if you have that, you can go find the image in your media gallery most of the time and fix that issue there. But it will require you to go and deal with that. Yes, ma'am.
I tried to do it, and it says that Chrome extensions negatively affected the page's load performance, and to try auditing in incognito mode. But when I go to an incognito window, there's no extensions there.
Yes, this is a relatively simple fix. If you go into the settings for the extension, you can enable it in incognito mode.
Okay.
I'm sorry, like that is absolutely true. One of the things you will notice, and if you have a ton of extensions, even if you don't get that error, it's worth going ahead and trying to test it in a browser that doesn't have extensions. Browser extensions add processing time to every web page you visit. So if you have 1 million browser extensions and every website you go to seems like it's crawling, you probably want to try disabling some Chrome extensions.
And if you open an incognito window, it does that by default. It disables all of your
So you have to manually enable the ones that you want in incognito. All right, accessibility. We're heading through them. Wow, yeah. Okay, we're gonna skip this one.
Yeah.
PWA. This one's really cool just because it makes your page installable, and that makes it so that, like on an Android phone, particularly, it'll basically prompt and say, "Do you want to install this as an app?" And it creates an app icon. PWA also can load additional pages in the background, so your page loads even faster because some assets are cached to the local browser, which means your ads load faster. And if your ads load faster, you'll probably make a little more money. Rich snippet testing tool. So we're going to talk about, this is about mobile search results, right? Right now, whatever's going on, Google Search Console is not one-to-one with structured data testing tool. If you want to find out if your schema is validating properly, you are better off using the rich snippet testing tool. This tool will also tell you and present what your content might look like in mobile search results. So if you are eligible, you can get a preview of what kinds of presentation you might be getting. Obviously, we have Create, which currently supports schema for lists, recipes, and how-to cards. And as Eric showed, those are all working in rich snippet testing tools. I'm going to be inclusive and say WPRM is also available. Yoast also provides some schema tools. So, you know, there are other options in the world, though we are obviously a little partial to Create. This stuff matters, and if somebody tells you it doesn't, find out what they're selling. I have heard in our groups, I have heard elsewhere, people will say it's impossible to get good page speed scores, or it doesn't really matter. They are straight lying to you, and they are probably trying to sell you on some alternate solution. You should ignore them. I'm just going to say it. I spent 6 months in this. I promise you this makes a difference. How Mediavine does mobile. So I'm going to talk a little bit real quick about how we've built our tools and how much we consider mobile every day. So we optimize for page speed. That's all the way through. Ads, Trellis, Create, every single thing we're building, we are looking for ways to make sure page speed is as impacted in either none or very little. Every couple of weeks, we're like, what can we do with our script wrapper to potentially make it a little faster and a little better in mobile experiences so that our users will have incredibly fast page speeds and be able to convert more users and readers. We have a mobile video experience that we are constantly working to enhance. Create is 100% mobile first and was written that way. If you were to ever turn off, like by default, if you load a Create card, it's going to be mobile first. We make changes to it based on the size of the screen to make it look nicer for bigger screens. But its first design was based for people are going to look at recipes on their phones. Are they going to be able to read this recipe and make this food? So reader styles are mobile first. We imagine readers in their kitchens. I don't ever print anything. I know there are some people that love to print recipes. I am crazy, and I'm willing to risk a little pancake batter on my phone. And it happens pretty much every time. We actually recently reduced Create's page speed impact even more by reevaluating how we called that JavaScript and when we called that JavaScript to try and reduce its footprint in the page even more. And we will continue doing that anytime we have a chance. Essentially what we discovered is that there were a couple of bugs in Create's logic while we were building Trellis because it was the only thing available and it had a couple of bugs. And so we worked to wipe that out. Focus on generating rich snippets in search via schema. Rich snippets are incredibly important. These cards are going to be printable, but going forward, we think it's incredibly important that you have full support for schema and that you are able to generate these rich snippets and enhance your mobile search results.
And what we mean by that are the pretty carousels that you get on mobile with recipes, or you're starting to get them with how-to cards, where people can sort of swipe left or right to see the pictures. If you've got a how-to card with steps and there's a picture at each step, you'll get a carousel of the images that are in your steps. Or if you make a list of your top 15 Italian recipes, that list, when someone searches for the best Italian recipes, if you happen to rank for it, your entire list will take up the mobile carousel, and every single item that's in your list will be in that picture carousel that people can click on.
Is that going to click to the recipe that's in your roundup, or is
Yes.
it clicking to your site?
No, it's clicking to the, no, so you're thinking that it might click to an external, yes? List schema does not allow you to use external URLs as part of it. That's part of the actual schema.org requirements. So if you have a list that has 10 of your own recipes and 5 of other bloggers, only your 10 recipes will export in the schema for Google to pick up. So you're not going to see that. You're only going to see traffic to your site from those. But you're still giving your friend a link back, which is wonderful. So, yes?
Are you saying that we can put our process shots in the Create plugin now?
Yeah. You can put images in each step, right?
In how-to steps?
In recipes?
Yeah, you should be able to, yes. Essentially what it does is it sticks a little shortcode in the step and renders it in the template. You can see it in a real life preview now. Trellis, designs are mobile. CSS is built for mobile. We write the least CSS we possibly can and we actually stick it in the head. And when we stick that in the head, we can actually take and put all of the other CSS that WordPress wants to output. We can throw it in the footer and load it asynchronously so it doesn't become a blocking resource on your page load. Every update to the code is tested against Lighthouse. Every single update. Every time I make any kind of change, I get a Lighthouse score to tell me if I'm acceptable or not. JS, the JavaScript is optimized for mobile. We wrote a lot of JavaScript that basically, so for our lazy load comments, the JavaScript app that renders and processes comments for both display as well as for submitting comments, the JavaScript file is not even loaded into the page until the user gets very close to the comments.
So it works just like your ads in that aspect, right? A lot of you are very familiar at this point how the lazy loading works for the ads, in that actual ad will not load until someone scrolls near it. They're doing the exact same thing with the comments in Trellis.
Comments and images are both lazy loaded by default. There's no other option actually. You can't run a Trellis theme that doesn't have lazy loaded comments and images. And we also put placeholder SVGs. Doesn't really matter, but there's a placeholder, sort of a gray background that holds the spot that your image would fill so that your ads will render reliably and in the right spacing. Our lazy load comments and images we have confirmed through testing are indexed by Google and properly presented. One of the other things worth mentioning is recently Google had their event, Google I/O, where their speed experts went through a list of things that you could do to make your site faster. Trellis does all of them. Every single item that they covered in that presentation, we were already doing it.
So are the comments different to WordPress comments, or are they just?
They are WordPress comments, but we've built our own JavaScript app on top of WordPress comments to render those in a way that we think makes the most sense and provides that load value. This is another sample of what one of the sites might look like. There's a theme. Our themes are basically named after plants. This is called the birch. This is the wisteria and the marigold. These are 3 of our options. There will be some more. We hope to work with third-party vendors as well. because we want this platform to be used by all of our publishers, no matter who they want to work with and what they want their sites to look like, because we think that the faster internet or faster web is better for everyone. Thank you, and we will take questions now for as long as they will let me.
Wait, go ahead. I was going to say, when is Trellis going?
That's the $1 million question.
It feels like such a tease.
Yes. Trellis is coming in the grand scheme of humanity very, very, very soon. But in the scheme of does it available now, it's going to be a few more months. We have a large beta list. We want to try and get through that beta list. We are doing some internal testing, but the biggest barrier right now is that as of today, the only theme that's even close to production ready is that one core theme. That I didn't really show, but all of those scores are, the scores you saw, the 96 through the hundreds, that was a Trellis theme running Create, MCP, and some social tools. That's the only theme we have. We only have one ready to go, and if we shipped that out to 1,000 publishers and y'all all adopted it, we would have 1,000 websites that all looked almost the same, which I don't know if that would be good or not, but I don't want to like force that issue. So we want to make sure that we have a little variety ready before we start going to a wide audience.
Yeah, the idea being that we will work with, like Skylar's in the room from Feast, we'll work with Lindsay from Purr, lots of designers in the space, Bellino Web Studios I've been talking to get some themes that they create specifically for Trellis. That are available in the Trellis marketplace that we've vetted to make sure that they match all the page speed stuff that we've worked so hard on, that they're falling in line with that and don't affect the page speed score.
We're also building tools to make that kind of development easier for those partners.
Yeah. So the idea being, we're not trying to lock you into Mediavine everything. Like, we don't want that for anybody. And the other important thing is Trellis is going to be open source, so you don't have to be working with Mediavine to use it. Just like Create, you don't have to be working with Mediavine to use it. Do you get a few additional ad experiences potentially that will make you lots of money? Probably. But yeah, we're not trying to lock anybody in. We're just trying to make the internet a better place. But I think if you take nothing else away from this, take away that responsive is not mobile first, and start thinking about your site in terms of mobile first. Start talking to your designer, bless you, about a mobile first design rather than a responsive design. Yes?
Yes, and also, log in, think about what plugins you're actually using and which ones create value for you, and you would be amazed how fast your site might get just by deactivating a handful of plugins.
Yeah.
How do you turn the plugin, or I'm sorry, how do you turn the Lighthouse extension on for incognito?
If you go to your right-click the three-dot menu, and it'll say More Tools, and then it'll say Extensions, and you'll get a grid of all your extensions. And on each of you can search Lighthouse in that extension set, and then it'll say there's a details on each of the extensions. And when you click details, there's a checkbox about halfway down the page. You just right-clicked and, well, there's a lot easier. Right-click on Lighthouse, apparently. And I had to dig for it. I didn't know where it was.
That's funny.
Every time we reload Lighthouse, do the numbers change so drastically?
If they're changing drastically, that's strange. A lot of times you are going to have to run it a few times. What I found during my experience is that I would run it, and the thing that I knew I had just changed it was still showing up. So I'd run it again, and it would still be showing up. And then I'd go and look in the source code, and I would double check it, and it would either not be there or be there. So you're probably going to want to make sure you cleared your cache. You might have to get into a place where you're sort of wiping out your local browser cache, but another option is, again, using the incognito window where it's not retaining those caches as much.
Yeah, I don't know about Lighthouse, but the PageSpeed one anyways uses actual Chrome browsing data.
Yeah, so the PageSpeed is actually powered by Lighthouse. It uses under the hood a tool called Puppeteer, which is basically a headless browser, which we are way in the weeds right now. But yes, the way that Lighthouse tests is it uses Lighthouse and PageSpeed are using a Chrome browser to run their tests. So those are experiences that should be in line with what they're doing. What's happening with the extension and why it will yell at you if you have too many extensions installed is it's leveraging what's already, like the Chrome browser that's sitting in the page already there, versus having to run up the software to sort of mock a Chrome. So we're really in the weeds. Skylar, please send me an email and I'll explain this if you want to know more.
Amazing.
Should we test the home page and a blog page and we're going to get different results?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Almost 100% of the time, you are going to have different results for those two pages.
Yeah.
The site in question has a 96. That's the page that has a 96 has got a relatively long 11-item create list. On some post pages that are longer, that scores a 95. On the home page, it scores a 97. The differentiation of the types of content is going to impact the site. Some of you have sponsored posts and things that require extra tracking pixels. I can pretty much guarantee you those pages are going to suck. But they are creating value for you in other ways where those costs are worth the benefits.
For
So
sure.
in everything you're doing here, you have to measure, is this 2 extra points in page speed worth this price that I'm paying and possibly reduce revenue? Can I measure that revenue value in some meaningful way to where I can quantify that? We're deep in the weeds of math, but it's a business, so there's always math weeds.
And I mean, it's one of those things where like sponsored posts aren't always great for SEO. That doesn't mean they're not worth doing, right? And then in the same vein, if they slow down that page, but those tracking pixels aren't running on any other page, it's okay. It's really okay.
Yeah, what the page that you're going to get different scores per page, and that's going to be okay because it means some pages are faster than others. Now, if you notice that your fastest pages are always the ones performing the best, there's a lesson to be gained there. Any other quick questions? We're already 5 minutes over, I guess. I don't know what.
We're okay.
I have 5 minutes before I need to go grab a bag and head to the airport, so I can ask a couple more questions. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening to me to drone on about technical details that may or may not have been interesting. I appreciate it.
And you guys know you can always email us too.
Yes. Thank you.